Hey there, friends and enemies. JoPaWrites here once again, and today, welcome back to The Writer's Thoughts, my podcast on all things gaming, streaming, geeky, superheroes, whatever you might find interesting, whatever I find interesting that I really want to touch on. And I really do appreciate the support as we dropped the very first episode last week. If you missed it, make sure you catch up on that one. It's going to be on all your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify, Podbean, all that kind of good stuff. So thank you so much for the support. It's been absolutely tremendous. Again, we're doing a few episodes with me just handling it solo as I get comfortable with the whole podcasting thing. Then we're going to move on and start inviting guests on. We're going to have a great time, talk about some awesome subjects, so I'm very excited about that. Today is going to be a little bit more heated than the last one, a little bit more intense, just because some of these subjects are a little bit touchier, things that I know people are passionate about, and I very much am as well. So, if you want to follow me, if you want to see when I'm dropping new podcasts, when I stream, what content I'm creating, make sure you follow me. I'm JoPaWrites on every platform. That's Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever platform you see, I'm probably on there as JoPaWrites. So I'm going to jump into it, and I can't wait. Now, the first thing I wanted to touch on, something that's been making waves, is the Phase 5 challenge and the Rowdy Rogan controversy. Now, if you haven't seen it, and if you don't know what Phase 5 is, it's basically Faze Clan, one of the biggest esports and content creation organizations in the entire world, recruiting 5 new members. And this is supposedly going to be members who are recruited through some type of challenge where they submit entries. They have to go through a series of cutbacks from everybody submitting to the top 100, to the top 20, to the top 5. So, breaking down Phase 5 in general is tough, right? If you look at it, unless you have a pre-established following, you've got almost no shot to be even picked for the top 100. Combing through the top 100, the majority of people who are there, all of them actually, are established names in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's on different platforms, whether they're streamers, whatever the case may be, there are no top 100 members who actually have, are completely unknown, is what I want to say. And that's where the frustration for me comes with this challenge. I think it's good in the sense that it pushes people to create something that they would be proud enough to submit to Faze, which is important, right? Creation is a necessary thing. You want folks to be able to go out and put their best foot forward with something like that. But it gives so many people false hope that they might have a shot to get in the Faze when realistically there's no possible chance. And that is where I think a lot of people get their hopes up, and a lot of people will think this is a life-changing opportunity, which getting in the Faze is, and they've just realistically, there's no way that they're going to get in. So many people and fans will fool themselves and use the Phase 5 hashtag and try to get their small communities to rally behind them in a way that there's no possible way they can get enough eyes on them to be seen and actually be chosen from Faze. And that's where I look at it, and I'm not a fan of challenges to get into an organization already, because I feel like you should get in on your merits and they should recruit you, and it should be a mutually beneficial thing. It shouldn't be one side is putting in all this effort to create this content for the org to look at and be like, yes, no, this is good enough for us, this is not. I think that's a weird way to put it, and I think one of the main reasons that these organizations do that is it generates a lot of attention for them. It generates a lot of hype. People get excited, and a lot of folks will use their hashtag, the Faze5 hashtag, and it works. It's successful marketing. I just don't feel like it's the best way to recruit the best members, and I also don't know. I always wonder if these clans already have in mind who they want to pick. They've already been scouting these folks for a while. I'm sure they do interviews to make sure that they're a good fit, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's just frustrating for me to watch when folks who are not going to be anywhere near the top 100 because they just don't have the fan base yet put all this time, energy, and effort into something that is not going to pay off for them. And maybe they meet other folks who are going for it and it helps them along their road. But for the most part, all I see is a bunch of dejected, smaller creators who probably should not have been led to believe that they were going to make it anyway. And that's really kind of unfortunate. But now we dive into the Rowdy Rogan part of the situation. He is a 6-year-old COD content creator who, if I'm being honest as a dad, I don't think I want my 6-year-old to get that much attention that early. And it's a lot of pressure, man. And to put that on a 6-year-old and to go for Faze and to potentially be in Faze, it's a dream come true for a kid, but also, I mean, what if he doesn't want to do this again anymore in 6 months or a year? What if he's over it, And he's 6. Their opinions change, their minds change pretty rapidly, and to have that pressure on that kid is kind of crazy to me. Anyway, so Rowdy Rogan has made the top 20, and one of the challenges, or the challenge, in order to progress to the next round is to have a video or something go viral online. So what they did is and apparently it was the 6-year-old's idea, but who knows realistically, decided that they were going to have the kid pretend to be banned on COD and also pretend to be banned on TikTok. They filmed a video with him crying to his dad. It went viral. People were upset. And a lot of people were like, why is he banned? What's happening? This is not fair. I saw so much support on my timeline. And I immediately was cautious because for a couple reasons, right? One, folks are so quick to jump in and defend somebody who gets banned that they love to support, regardless of whether the situation is legitimate or not, right? Folks get banned for legitimate reasons sometimes, and people don't care. They want their favorite content creator to be there no matter what they do, and that is a very frustrating and very bad system that's going to keep going on for a while. I don't see it changing anytime soon, but man, is that a way to get folks a God complex, make them arrogant, whatever the case may be, because that's why you see folks like the Paul brothers or whoever that have these huge platforms that feel like they're untouchable. They can do whatever the hell they want, and it's never going to matter, because if they get banned one place, they'll go somewhere else. If they have a problem one place, they'll do something else. You look at Faze Jarvis, the kid who got banned from Fortnite for using and installing and trying out an aimbot for content. He's still okay. He's still doing other things because his fans followed him regardless of what he did. Now, he's had to adjust, and I don't know how well he has or has not adjusted, but at the end of the day, it's annoying for me that folks will jump to conclusions and rush to defend folks when they don't have the full story. And that blows my mind, because it just doesn't make sense that you would support somebody who you don't even know them in real life. You don't know who they are, what they're really about. All you know of them as a content creator, and it could be night and day difference. But I think that's just the society and the culture we're in right now. For me, maybe it's old man yelling at clouds, but it frustrates me a little bit. What are you gonna do? So there was that. There was a lot of public support for him, and ultimately, it turns out he was not banned. Right? He had staged the whole thing, and that leads me to my second point of this is that we're showing folks who are coming up in the content creation business, mostly younger kids or teenagers, young adults, whatever the case may be. Those are the ones that are really pushing to be the next superstar. That the easiest way to go viral, the easiest way to make a name for yourself, the easiest way to join Faze is to unfortunately set up some controversy, some drama, something that unfortunately is going to gain negative press, right? And support for you, whether it's staged or not. So I wouldn't be surprised if this happens more often. And it's really a shame because for the 6-year-old, he's a good player. He's already got a sizable following on social media, on Twitch, everything like that. And encouraging this type of thing is just a bad precedent. It's something we've seen that works in the past quite a bit. So well, thinking about this idea, you knew it would work. It's easy, but at the end of the day, it's probably not worth it. For them, it might be if they make Faze, but how many other people are now going to follow suit and try to set up a similar situation to gain sympathy, attention, and gain that entry into the next or blow up so they can be considered for Phase 5 next time. And that's, oh man, it's so problematic in the long run because you're the boy who cried wolf at that point. So if that kid, if Rowdy Rogan or somebody else actually gets banned next time, folks are gonna jump on it and think it's staged, it's set up for them to garner attention, and at some point you're gonna break that goodwill that you've earned with your followers. Now, will that happen before they've kind of exploded? Who knows? It's just an unfortunate situation for me because I don't ultimately think that it's going to set the right standard, and that's just frustrating. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Rowdy Rogan and Phase 5. I think going forward, I would love to see a little bit more inspection of what is happening and be like, okay, let's look at the totality of the situation before we jump in and blindly support somebody without getting all the facts. Whether that happens or not, probably not. I'm being a little bit optimistic, hoping that that's a trend we see in the future, but just my hopes and thoughts. So let me know what you think of Phase 5 of Rowdy Rogan. Will you support folks like that in the future? Hit me up on Twitter or wherever you might find me and let me know. So we're moving on, and this is going to be the next big controversy in gaming, and that is CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk 2077. Now, this game has been marred by controversy from almost the very beginning that I can remember, and it's just been one thing after another. For a game that's been hyped so unbelievably high because of the success of The Witcher, because of the past games from this studio, everyone loves CD Projekt Red. Or at least that was the case until Cyberpunk released. And now, I will caveat this first and foremost by saying for those who have played Cyberpunk 2077 without issues, a lot of folks have been enjoying it. The game itself seems like it's either living up to the hype or near abouts as far as like folks who can play it without any issues. But let's go over all the controversy and my thoughts on those. So first off, the game has had issues with developer crunch. I have been back and forth on Twitter with some folks about developer crunch and why we have to have more sympathy and empathy for folks who are doing that, and why it shouldn't be a thing regardless of industry. I know gaming is getting a lot of attention for its forced crunch right now, but there are a lot of industries that you have crunch in where you have to work 50, 60, even more hours, and it's honestly not necessary because these companies are making their money and they don't care about their employees at the end of the day. Some might at certain levels, but at the very top, it's all about numbers. And employees, the sooner that you can realize that and understand that the companies need to hire more people so they don't have to go through this crunch, the better. That's just a little side tangent from me, but I've always been one who has said crunch is absolutely unnecessary if a business is run properly. Okay, so they promised that there would be no crunch in the game. Like, they wouldn't have to work more than the standard hours for Cyberpunk 2077. They announced this years ago. But then, recently, that changed. They announced that they would be crunching, but it would only be for a short time. And then the game got delayed and delayed and delayed. And every time that crunch got extended. The unfortunate part about that situation is that now looking back on it, we had developers who are needing to work long unnecessary hours for a game that still was not anywhere near finished, especially when you look at the PS4 and the Xbox One versions. Those are buggy messes, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit and why there's additional controversy around that. But there was no reason for them to crunch this hard and the game to still be this far off in many ways. It's just bad management at the end of the day. This game, from what I've seen, everything that I've heard, people I've talked to, probably should have waited to come out either middle to late of next year or scrapped the PS4 and Xbox One versions altogether. The problem with that is this game was originally supposed to release only on Xbox One, PS4, and then PC. And if they didn't have the PS5 and Series X versions on console, this game would be dead on arrival. It'd be no shot of it having any success. So that's really unfortunate. It just means that the crunch is not effective. It didn't work. So regardless of what how the studio will downplay it, what they'll try to tell everyone about why the crunch was necessary, it flat out was not effective. Some other controversies surrounding the game. There's a lot of talk about the developers, not the studio in general, the messaging, having transphobic messaging, not using the correct language, showing off harmful stereotypes of transgender folks. And that has been something that I think those in the community will have to talk more about, because it's unfortunate, as somebody who prides myself on supporting everybody regardless of gender, sexuality, anything like that. It's backlash that's unneeded from a company that has kind of, with this game, tried to feed into it and make your character customizable, but like limiting it in a way that only exacerbates some of the problems. So that's something I'm not going to get too much into, just because, again, I don't feel like that's my place to really focus on, although I hope that that's messaging that changes in future games and projects from that studio, as well as other studios in general. Now we're going to get to the issues with the current gen consoles that, in my mind, are mind-blowing. I've never seen some things like this, and it kind of really frustrates me that a developer with so much goodwill from the community after awesome games in the past has kind of thrown a ton of it away. You look at some things like they did not release review codes for PS4 and Xbox One. Now they came out and they dropped a statement. And they basically said they knew that there were some issues with those versions, but they didn't know how bad they were. If you're going to not release any review codes for those platforms, you know that the game has problems. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around it. And even so much that some review sites have put caveats on the game when they aggregate all of their scores together with PC, PS4, PS5, Series X, and Xbox One. There are notifications on those pages saying that CD Projekt Red knowingly did not let folks review the PS4 and the Xbox One versions because of how potentially bad it could be. And that is absolutely insane to me. I don't think there's any defending CD Projekt Red in that particular instance. They've announced that they're going to give refunds to folks who have ordered and pre-ordered Cyberpunk 2077. But that's not good enough because folks didn't know what they were getting into, and now they purchased something. They've got to deal with hassle from the PlayStation Store or Microsoft, and those companies are not all in on giving refunds like CD Projekt Red is. So it's this back and forth. It's a huge headache for a lot of people, and it's so unfortunate that we got to this point. If anything, the game should have been delayed on those platforms, released at a later date once they perfected them. But it's insane to me that this is a thing that happened in a game that everyone was so hyped about with a studio that everyone loves so much. Yeah, again, I can't defend anything from the studio on this one because it just blows my mind that they would have done this and known that it was going to be like this on some level and still shipped the product. I just, I'm almost at a loss for words, to be honest. And if you know me, that's not a thing that happens all that often. Going forward, they promised that they're going to be fixing a lot of the bugs, although the PS4 and Xbox One versions aren't supposed to release the major updates until February. So that would be, in essence, 3 full months before you see a fully fixed game for something that you purchased, like likely for Christmas or around Christmas for folks. And it's just unfortunate because going back to what we talked about previously, there's a very real chance that developers are going to have to continue to crunch for the foreseeable future because they just have to fix things in the game. Now that the game has been shipped, there's no going back. You can't put it back in the box and say, well, we're going to unship this and fix all the issues and then reship it once it's ready. That's not happening. Folks have to now trust that they're going to fix the game in a timely fashion. That when they release these updates in February, that there's not going to be more issues to deal with at that point. It's a... I was going to use some foul language. It's a bad situation that unfortunately is just not going to get better for any time soon. The other problem that we've seen is that some folks who are having good experiences with the game are completely invalidating those of folks who are having a bad time, and the bad time isn't from bad gameplay necessarily. It's not from not enjoying the story. It's all from bugs and glitches and crashes and things that the player cannot do literally anything about. Video games are art. It's a medium that where enjoyment is in the eye of the beholder, right? Like, not everyone's going to enjoy the same game. You look at the Game of the Year nominees from 2020, and you had Last of Us winning a bunch of awards. Some folks hated that game, not because of the issues with it, but because they just didn't like the story. They thought it was a bad tale. Others absolutely loved it and will swear up and down it's the Game of the Year. Ghost of Tsushima is a little bit more streamlined. Not as many people dislike that game, but even so, it won Player's Choice Game of the Year, but didn't win a lot of other awards. And the reasons for that are it's all subjective. You don't know until you talk to other people how they feel about games, what they're going to enjoy about games, all that kind of good stuff. So that's something that I think does not take, no one should take into consideration when giving feedback about this game right now. There are reviews out there that can tell you how good or bad the game is in general. But what we're talking about and the problem that folks online who are blindly defending CD Projekt Red, regardless of how shady their practices have become, is that studios are gonna continue to try to get away with things if you let them, right? Call of Duty has released a new game every single year, regardless of which ones are good, which ones are meh, which ones are bad, which ones have legitimate upgrades, or if they're just kind of reskins of previous games that we've seen. And COD fans will buy those games regardless of waiting to see how good it is, how bad it is, whatever. So it continues the cycle. Sports games, oh my God, sports games do the same exact thing. All that's updated oftentimes is the roster, and they'll continue to churn out new games every single year. When I was younger, I did buy FIFA fairly regularly, but to watch these games continue to put out the same product and not improve or improve just ever so slightly, but just with updated rosters, is one of the biggest issues in gaming, in my opinion. Folks and studios who try new things will never get the same kind of blowback from me that you might see from studios who kind of focus on one specific thing and never improve and have a bunch of microtransactions or whatever the case may be and just continue to churn out the same nonsense over and over. Now, that was a tangent on things, reasons that I think blindly developing or supporting developers can be problematic. I will counter that to say some studios have earned that trust. For me specifically, Bungie is a studio that some people think can't get anything right, except for because of some of the social causes they support, because of the updates that I've seen continuously, the interaction with the player support, the community managers, all that kind of good stuff. They're a company I will give the benefit of the doubt, so I definitely understand that. However, giving a company the benefit of the doubt does not mean you shush other players who are having actual problems with the game, whether it's bugs, crashes, glitches, anything like that. If they're having those kind of issues that are impacting the way they play the game or making the game unplayable, you can't to say then that, oh, well, you should have gotten a next gen console. Oh, you should have gotten a PC to run this. You should have known that a game in 2020 can't be handled running on 7-year-old consoles is insane to me. And that is where I've seen a lot of folks kind of push back on some of the backlash from CD Projekt Red, and that is not in any way, shape, or form the player's fault. That is entirely on CD Projekt Red, on the way they marketed the game, on how they have pushed it as a game that will be across all these generations. If the game wasn't going to run on those consoles, they didn't want to capture the huge fan bases that are still on PS4 and Xbox One. They should not have released the game on those consoles. Point blank, period. That is never going to be on the gamers. It's never going to be on the players who decided to buy. They CD Projekt Red used their goodwill, knowing that folks would pre-order this game blindly because of the hype and because of how their studio has been received, and that is pretty shameful in my opinion. So ultimately, that's where I'm going to leave this story. I think it's super frustrating. You hate to see studios trend in this manner, and hopefully they can fix it. CD Projekt Red is a studio I really like the games that come from them, similar to like a BioWare, who have dropped down in status and need to rebound if at all possible. I'm entirely hopeful that they are able to in the long run, but we shall see. This is a long road to recovery for them, and we'll see what happens next. So now we're going to jump into a topic that I am very excited about, but also a little bit wary in the long run, and that is the HBO Max moving all the Warner Brother movies to that platform in 2021 alongside them being released in theaters. Now, obviously this pandemic has hit everybody a little bit different. There's a lot of problems with going back to theaters and opening them up safely at this point. But there's been a lot of controversy around this decision, and especially because they have not done the Disney option, which is to make it so that way that you can have these movies on Disney Plus, but you charge an extra fee. These movies on HBO Max are going to be included in the subscription cost. Now, this means several things. One, we're likely to see increased prices for HBO Max in the long run. I don't see any way that they don't bump up the prices. And I've been talking about this for a long time. When you include Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and HBO Max and Disney Plus, you're getting to the same price that we once had with cable packages, and that's what everyone wanted to avoid with cord cutting. So it's kind of problematic that we're seeing this trend to this degree, and there's so many different platforms now instead of everyone wants a piece of the pie. And I was really hoping that we would see some kind of merger between some of them, so that way you don't have to have 100 different packages at one time, and it's very frustrating. Now, from the movie side, a lot of actors and directors are apparently upset, or at least their representatives are, about this move because it means a smaller payday for them. Obviously, the theater companies like AMC are upset because folks are going to obviously choose to watch these movies from the comfort of their own home, even when they can safely go out and watch these movies. Maybe it becomes the new norm. And this, from everything I've heard, is mostly going to be a test run to see if this is a viable option long term. If HBO Max subscriptions skyrocket because of this, very possible that this could be something that they look at in the long run. And we've seen movies developed specifically for Netflix. So there's every chance that HBO Max takes a similar route, starts developing movies just for their platform, and so that you'll have to have a subscription to that to watch certain movies. I don't feel like that'll ever be as viable an option to make big bucks as you might see from in-theater movies in the long run. But Netflix has proven time and again that they can increase their subscription, their number of subscriptions by having these big name movies, signing big name actors to contracts to have multiple movies or TV shows or whatever. But again, Netflix has already announced that they are raising their prices in the near future. And this is where the problem is going to lie. There's going to be a breaking point where folks will look at all these subscription packages and be like, I can't have 100 different streaming services, so I'm gonna have to pick and choose a couple. They're gonna pare down what they have, and that's gonna be it. And we're gonna see this model go away. So I don't think it's sustainable long term for anyone besides maybe Netflix, because they have such a huge base right now. But even them, if they increase their prices too much, there's a very good chance that people will cancel, even if they cancel for a few months and then come back. In general, I don't think continuing to raise the prices consistently is going to be the move long term. Now, again, they got to pay for their new content. The new content is great. Whenever they put out series like The Witcher, they're super well received. So I don't know where that breaking point would be. We still may be a long way off of that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, HBO Max is trying something new. They're trying to bring in folks who are going to want to watch these movies but don't want to go to the theater. It's kind of good for the consumer in that they have options. But there are certain movies, like for me in particular, I have seen pretty much all of the Marvel movies in theaters with my wife and with the kids. Now, it's an experience for us. We go to the movies, that's it, probably like 2 times a year, something like that. And it's pretty much always for the Marvel movies because that's something we enjoy doing as a family. It does get super expensive though. If we want candy or soft drinks or popcorn or whatever the case may be, it can be very costly. So that's the major drawback and the reason we don't go to movies more. These movies on HBO Max are an interesting proposition. We do use Redbox to watch movies at the house. So there's a very real chance that we'll get HBO Max and watch some of these movies. I just don't think they're going to provide the same experience in certain cases. For me, big blockbuster hits like Wonder Woman that's coming out at the end of the year, those are movies that I would enjoy in the theater. I just think the whole experience is a little bit better. Sometimes it's not worth the cost, but that's the risk you run. Same thing if you're buying a video game or whatever the case may be. You're not going to enjoy every piece of film or art or video games or TV or whatever. So sometimes that's a risk you run, but at the same time, in general, I enjoy most of them that I will go to, and I really think the movie theater experience is one a couple times a year that I really enjoy. And I know a lot of other people enjoy doing that as well. Seeing like Avengers Endgame in the theaters was absolutely fantastic. Some of the scenes were made better by having other folks around us, by also just the big screen, the darkness, everything just kind of fits for certain blockbusters like that. And I think that's where there's got to be a balance. There's a lot of movies I don't watch in theaters just because I don't feel like being in the movie theater actually enhances it at all. But if you're going to trim actors and directors and everyone's payday for those movies to not be in theaters, and there's a fan base to see them in theaters, that's going to lead to questions in the future of, will those actors, actresses, directors, producers sign on to these movies knowing that they're not going to be hitting theaters, or if they're hit theaters, they're only going to be partially in theaters. There are going to be less showings because they're also showing on HBO Max. So now a big chunk of the people that are going to watch the movie are going to be watching it on their TVs at home. So that reduces their box office draw. And a lot of things, unfortunately, are still pushed by box office numbers, even though I think the whole system probably needs a rework at some point in the near future, because it just seems like weird movies succeed in the box office, movies that don't make any sense why they're so successful, um, and too much hype is placed around how much money movies make compared to, well, without looking at budget costs, and then you look at reviews from critics and whatnot. So I don't know. I think the whole system is kind of janky and old school in a way that needs to be updated. That is one thing I will say for sure. I hope theaters take this time, and if they come back as strong as ever, reevaluate their formula and find a better way to make their experience that much better. We've seen it with sports. Sports attendance was down for a long time because they were stagnant. They didn't update their food choices. They didn't update their seating arrangements, their Wi-Fi, their this, that, and the other, and attendance was dipping because the product at home was just as or close enough to the product, as good as the product that was in person. And that's the danger that we're seeing with theaters and what we'll see from this pandemic and where they go from here. Because unfortunately, if the theaters do not up their game to make themselves more viable, this HBO Max deal is just the tip of the iceberg, and we're going to see it all over the place. Now, I've kind of rambled back and forth a little bit on this subject because there's a lot of kind of moving parts. But at the end of the day, it's up to the theaters to improve the experience, so that way once we can safely open, once we have a vaccine, once everyone is less concerned about the COVID issue, folks will actually return to the theaters. We're seeing it so much with in-person things. Like, you look at in-person retail, way down compared to online shopping. You look at, again, sports. We'll see what the attendance looks like once it opens back up. I know I'm a wrestling fan, and wrestling attendance was way down compared to what it previously was. These are all things that these industries who have become complacent need to improve on, and their premium needs to be on user experience and where and why whoever is attending that movie, game, whatever, gets the best experience possible, why they should keep coming back, why they should spend their money significantly more on that experience rather than enjoying it at home. And that's something that we'll see what the outcome is. I'm excited to have options going forward. I will definitely be watching a lot of the HBO Max movies coming out next year. I hope that we're able to find a happy medium, but I know not everyone can be satisfied with the results once like I said, the actors and actresses and then the movie theaters get involved. But I think this is a win for now, and we'll see what comes of it in the future. I'm excited. Looking at that slate of movies, I'll definitely be on HBO Max this year. I'm already on Disney Plus. Although I probably won't upgrade for any of those movies. If I'm going to watch a superhero movie, if I'm going to watch a Disney Plus movie, probably going in person. But I'll wait for the vaccine. I'll wait to see COVID is passed as much as possible, that it's safe to return and all that kind of good stuff, and go from there. So anyway, those have been the topics I wanted to touch on today. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I know I tend to throw a lot of information out there, throw a lot of my thoughts. I feel like these are things that just kind of come up in my head, and I need to get them out there and talk to you about them. And hopefully you enjoy the writer's thoughts. So my name is JoPaWrites. Catch me wherever you can find me on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, OnlyFans maybe one day, all that kind of good stuff. So hopefully you enjoyed, and I will catch you later. Have a great one.